Created to Recover is a nonprofit organization that creates a platform and a transformational experience for hand-picked individuals with powerful testimonies of their triumphant recovery from drugs and other life-altering circumstances. The most significant success for Created to Recover is the impact that has been made on each candidate as well as team members responsible for making the project a success. Additionally, the success of our previous Created to Recover film is creating dialogue within prison walls among inmates as a tool for their recovery process. This film is proof and reassurance that no matter what we face in this life, we were created to recover. When we started working on the second project, we decided to bring back the original crew plus a few new talents to help with makeup and production. Much like the first project, we wanted to schedule a meet and greet to be introduced to potential candidates. We decided to reach out to an additional organization, the Samaritan Council, to learn more about their impact in our community.
I am Candace Anderson, a licensed professional counselor at the Samaritan Counseling Center here in Montgomery, Alabama. The Samaritan Counseling Center is one of many locations across the country, and we are professional mental health providers, and we provide services for families, individuals, children, and couples. We treat mental disorders, anything from a life event, from grief, depression, anxiety, addiction, and all those things that might cause impairment in your day-to-day functioning.
And finally, the last piece of the puzzle was reconnecting with COSA, our original organization.
Hey, we're back. Glad to be back here with Michael Moore's project, Created to Recover. I'm Sharita Finch, the Executive Director of the Council on Substance Abuse. We participated in the first project, and we were so happy to be a partner with this great endeavor. The response among our staff, our consumers, were great. As a matter of fact, we show this video with every new staff because I believe that any and everybody has recovered from something. We believe that this next project will also elicit the same emotion that the first one did. Indeed, we all do recover from something. Our newest project participants are Charles and Deirdre. Charles deserves to be in this project because he is dedicated to his long-term recovery, and not just his recovery, but the recovery of others. He works tirelessly through many counties, trying to save one life at a time. And Deirdre, on the other hand, along with her wonderful cooking skills, have found a way to touch the hearts of any and everybody. Her story is an interesting journey. However, once you hear her story, you will be able to relate, to relax, and release just as she has done so in her life.
We live on purpose, and I wasn't. I was just existing. I wasn't living in and on purpose. But thank God it changed my life. So I want to do something different.
Hi, my name is Deirdre Johnson. I am 56 years old. I live in Daphne, Alabama, and I am in my 19th year of recovery from substance abuse. What influenced my addiction was my older brother, and he introduced me to my first mind-altering, mood-changing substance. I remember explicitly that my sister that was 2.5 years older than I am, and myself, we were on our way to a basketball game one night, and he pulled out a joint and said, "Here, y'all want to try some of this?" And so my sister just kind of held it in her hand, put it in her lips, and she kind of puffed, but she never lit it. And so I was like, oh, well, give it to me. And, and so I lit it up, and I smoked, and I got high, and I was on a really horrible trip, just from the weed. So that was my first time, and I was 12 years old when that happened. Looking back on that, I could see that I was actually allergic to what was going on, to the weed, actually, because it took me outside of myself. It took me outside of my character, and it made me do things that I wouldn't do under normal circumstances. So the next time that I started getting high, started using, I found that, in my getting high, that I could escape some issues or some pain that I was feeling, and, it took me outside of who I was, because, I had been molested very, very early in life, and so I always felt like I was different, or, I didn't live in the right place, I was born to the wrong family, just all kinds of things that I told myself, because people growing up made me feel as if I wasn't enough, or either if I wasn't enough, then I wasn't enough, or they made me feel I was too much. So when I smoked the weed, it took me outside of all of that, and none of that mattered. All that mattered at that time was just, me being able to escape all of the things that other people told me I was or was not. So by the time I was like 21, I had began to experiment with harder drugs, like, snorting cocaine. And, at the time, they had a drug called THC. And so I started doing those things, and got involved with an older man, and he knew how to cook up the powder cocaine and make it into the rock that you smoked. And so I went from snorting to smoking the freebase, and then ultimately they started having it on the street that was already rocked up, and we started smoking that. And so then I just became somebody else. So ultimately I started hanging out with these girls who tried to teach me how to steal. And I wasn't a good thief. I was a horrible thief. So I started getting in trouble for stealing, because I was stealing to support my habit, because, I didn't have a job. I wouldn't hold down a job because that money was too slow. So I went to jail a lot, and I got caught a lot. And so ultimately what brought me to where I am today was my stealing and my involvement with crack cocaine. And I ended up in prison 4 times, and so my 4th time around in prison, I was at the work release for like about 2.5 years, and I never saw my check. I never cashed my check. And so I said to myself that if I could stay here at the work release and live like that, then I could, get out and do the same thing. So that was the turning point for me. Although I was at the work release long enough to save up some money, and I purchased a car, and I drove home. This was September 13th, 1996. I went home and I got high the same night. And so I got high for 2.5 years. The laws had changed. So, and I was, like I said, a horrible thief, and I had gotten a misdemeanor, which didn't send me back to prison because I had did an end of sentence. So I got a misdemeanor charge with the city jail. And so while I was in the city jail, I said to God, because I had learned how to pray and how to talk to God and hear his voice and things of that nature while I was locked up. So being in the city jail, and I said to God that I knew how to do jail. I knew how to, brush my teeth 3 times a day and work on my skin and hair and things of that nature. but I didn't know how to live outside of jail in my own skin, or live outside of jail and not put drugs into my system. So I asked God if he would help me, because if he didn't, I felt like I was gonna die. And so I was in jail for like 3.5 months, and I got out and I was trying to go to treatment, and the lady told me that if I had 3.5 months clean. So she told me to start going to the meetings and get a sponsor, and that's what I did. And so I managed to accumulate some time. I went to the meetings, and I was really into what they had to say, because the things that they were saying in the rooms, and when I say in the rooms, I mean Narcotics Anonymous, they were things that I had never heard, and where I came from, those people weren't talking that type of language. So I stayed there and I did what they told me to do, and I was able to get some clean time under my belt. And so here I sit 19 years later, and I got an associate's degree, then I got a bachelor's degree, and today I'm working on a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. And I work for COSA part-time as on the opiate grant. And so, and I go to church, and I love God, and he loves me. And and I'm learning to love myself. Because, for so long, it was like, I felt like I was invisible, really. Nobody really noticed me or thought anything about me, or that my life or anything was worth telling. So to be a part of this process is such a great honor, to tell someone my story, and in hopes that my story will help save someone else's life. Let them know that, even though I've been through the trenches, with going to prison and being molested and having low self-esteem and self-worth, that God chose me to recover and to be a part of this process, and that someone will hear my story and, and say, like, kind of, what must I do to be saved, or what must I do to recover? And so I get to tell my story, and somebody gets to hear it, and someone gets to get an opportunity to recover and to live and to grow and to become someone great.
My name is Charles Hasselrig, and I am the peer support coordinator with Council on Substance Abuse. I really came from a great background. I think what influenced my was I was never satisfied. I always wanted to carry things to another level. I served 3.5 years. Yeah, I was in the military 3.5 years. 2 years I was drafted. I was on a football scholarship to Florida A&M, and I flunked out of school, and before I could get home, my draft notice was in the mail. Later on, after I got in the military, being the adrenaline junkie I was, I joined Airborne. I was Airborne Ranger. So I was badass. And I served I served a tour and a half in Vietnam. And then I got shrapnel. I lost the use of my eye, and also it affected my hand. I spent 6 months in the hospital in rehab. And then they put this animal out on the street and expected me to act like a real life human being. Don't work like that. I started drinking in high school, probably around in the 10th grade. The main thing was that then I was running around with but guys that were a lot older than I was. And in order to fit in, because I was real shy when I was a kid, but when I would drink something or take something, I wouldn't be that wallflower anymore. I would be the life of the party and have a great time, and what it did was I actually developed a dependency on things like that. In order for me to feel normal, I would have to drink. Or in order for me to feel good, I would have to take a pill, So it just progressively worse. It got worse and worse. And when I was, especially during my experience when I went to Vietnam, they had some serious drugs over there. And I think I stayed high every day I was over there. Because I was so afraid. I had so much fear that I had to do something. Seeing that much death is just not natural, man. It's not natural. You be talking to a guy and 5 minutes later, he ain't there no more. And it takes a toll on you mentally. And I had to do something in order to get that off of me. And I was an animal because I was trained to be an animal. And it just escalated like that. See, I had lost the fear of death. And human life didn't have any more value. So I was capable of doing any and everything. And getting high was the way that I could cope with the situations that was rolling around in my head. I was introduced to a program called Narcotics Anonymous. That's how I got clean. And Narcotics Anonymous believes in a 12-step system. What the steps did for me was it identified my strengths, my weaknesses, and I learned to capitalize on my strengths, and I learned to play down my weaknesses. It allowed me the opportunity to reflect on my life and begin to forgive myself for some of the things I did. Because see, I did a lot of people a lot of harm, but I harmed myself probably more than I harmed anybody else. I didn't want to commit suicide. I've never been suicidal, but I just really didn't want to live anymore. And recovery has given me the opportunity to have 2 lives in one lifetime. I am not the same person. What you said about me then don't even apply now.
How do you feel about going through this process with Created to Recover?
A little nervous. It's a new experience. But I enjoy it because maybe somebody can hear my story. And maybe they can relate. And maybe if they understand where I came from, that they can do the same thing that I've done. Turn my life completely around.
The turning point for me was when I lost everything, pretty much. Not that I had to lose those things, that just happened. And I got tired of trying to be somebody I wasn't.
Working with Lucy in her recovery process was as ideal as a therapeutic relationship could be. She was an absolute willing client. And that's so important when we're trying to get through different barriers and process traumatic events, the desire to be here and actually do the work. So in that respect, she was always present. She always made our time together. She always made our sessions priority. And so I would say that working with her was actually an inspiration. Her diligence and her commitment was inspirational.
Well, I'm originally from Minnesota, and I had a lot of things that had transpired prior to me moving to Alabama. And I thought that prior to coming to Alabama, I had processed those issues correctly, and I was moving forward with my life. Well, in 2008, I met my husband online and fell in love with him and moved down to lower Alabama or South Alabama. And, you know, we proceeded on with our marriage, and our first few years of marriage was really a struggle. It was tough. My mom, within the first few months of moving to Alabama, got sick and passed away. It was not an unexpected thing. She went into cardiac arrest from being in the hospital, and she passed away. And I did not properly grieve that. I didn't know at the time I wasn't grieving it like I should, or wasn't going through the steps. I just went back to work, went and did what I had to do to get through to help support my family. So as time went on, I had a miscarriage, and that devastated me and it devastated my husband and my family, because it was something we had just tried so hard to have happen. So within about a 4 or 5 year period of our marriage, I lost both my parents and a baby that I desperately wanted, and I did not grieve any of it very well. During all that, I was having a lot of pain. I was having a lot of back pain because of my job, a lot of emotional stress and duress, and not handling life well at all. So I found out when I started taking pain medicine for my pain, I realized that it was also calming my nerves down at the same time. And that's what started my addiction to pain medicine, was that I started using it for my pain, but I was using it to calm my nerves. And that kind of transgressed. Yes, I was treating pain, but it was treating an emotional need that I was trying to fill. And then came about July 14th, 2015, my husband died suddenly. And unfortunately, I was there when it happened, and I tried to do what I could do to bring him back, and it didn't. He passed away. And when that happened, then it really escalated my addiction. So instead of reaching out to people around me and telling them what was going on with me, that I just found myself more and more into taking pain medicine to try to fill that void. And it escalated to where I was probably taking 10 to 20 Lortabs a day, Percocets, Oxycontin, whatever I could take at that time to help with my pain and the emotional pain I was taking to do that, to get through day to day and to function. But the truth is that I was not functioning. I mean, here I am, you know, with my faith in the Lord, trusting in the Lord, been a Christian for several years, and all of that. And I knew better than what I was doing, but I let the temptation of what was going on with my pain and the little voice in my head saying, oh, you know, you could just do this. It's not going to hurt anything if you just take this. You know, after all, you're hurting. Everybody else does it. Why don't you just do it? And once I started down that avenue and started doing that, that opened the floodgate to where I just could not deal with things anymore. At that point in time, I decided I needed to contact a counselor to get in to talk to somebody. I could not, for me personally, could not afford to get into rehab because I didn't have the funds or any of that, and I didn't know how to go about doing it. The only thing I knew how to do, and from my experience, my medical background, was to just wean myself off and just do it slowly. And that's what I did. Over a matter of 3 or 4 days, I weaned myself down. I got sick, and it could have been a lot worse. And most times people need to go in the hospital to get off the medicines, but I had to just pray and just depend on the Lord to help me get off these medicines to get out of my system. It was at that point in time
that things started to turn around, because I started to acknowledge, really see how serious of a problem I had, because I didn't really see the whole extent of it. You know, I only saw that little portion of time from when my husband had passed to when I had lost my job and had made all these decisions and wasn't handling things. But when I started going through counseling and going through and looking at, well, really, where did that addiction start? It didn't just start overnight. It just didn't start from this one particular event. It started way back over the years, and my coping mechanisms had changed, but it was to the point where I was not coping anymore. Like, they weren't working for me. My coping mechanisms were not working, and so I went to medicine to cope. And when I finally admitted what was going on to not only the counselor, but to myself, that's when the healing really started to take place, because I started admitting that, look, I do have a problem. And now Lord has to help me fix it and has to help me move forward with my life, because the life prior to that is no longer existent. You know, I'm not that person anymore. I've got to maneuver the waters to figure out, well, who am I now? Who am I really? You know, and I didn't get to this place overnight. It was a process that got me to where I am, but I have to trust Him and depend on Him to help me through this addiction and keep going forward and keep addressing the issues that come up with it. And it's a daily issue that you have to keep moving forward and keep addressing it. Freedom, I can tell you right now, is wonderful. This weight has been lifted off of me. I had made a decision a few years ago, after I had stopped doing all of the pain medicines and I had turned my life around. I prayed for what would be a good word to describe me for this one particular year, but it's kind of carried on, and it was freedom. Freedom. I'm going to live in freedom, and that's how it is. And I'm excited and happy that I don't have the weight of those issues on me. How do I feel about going through the Created to Recover process? I was ecstatic, excited to be given this opportunity to do this, nervous at the same time and vulnerable, because of knowing that people are going to hear my story. That was a little nerve-wracking, I'll be honest. But also I was excited because I want to be able to help others and to reach others and to have people see that you can get through something. You could hit rock bottom and come up and be a totally different person and be a happy person and to be living life to its fullest.